Hey Wayfinder, welcome back to the channel. I want to share with you the wow 3-step process for going from pain to peace. And this process comes from a conversation that I had with the philosopher Jason Gregory, where he shared some really powerful ideas of how you and I can find our Zen.
There are certain cultures, they're telling the kids from 5 and 6, I know that you like playing with your friends and this and that, and that's all well and good. You need to do that as a kid. But have you looked within? Do you know what's going on the inside? And so when I grew up and where I grew up in Australia, I mean, this is like crazy talk. You wouldn't mention this. This doesn't even make any sense. And so that's what you're dealing with in the world, is that you've got probably 99% of people in the world unconscious of their internal terrain. So the first initial practice that one has to do is just look within. And then everything sort of flows on from that.
It's part of our human conditioning to have the propensity to be pointing outside of ourselves. These people have done me wrong. The world's wrong in this way. But if we stop and just turn inwards and to see what am I actually experiencing in this present moment, we have a wow insight, which is that the pain that I thought other people were causing me are actually painful thinking and challenging emotions that are being created inside of me in response to what's happening outside of me. In that realization, we realize we have responsibility, the ability to choose our response. In the classic words of Viktor Frankl, between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. And in that space, there is our freedom and our power. We can reduce the amount of pain that we have in our lives. It's such an important step on the journey to peace, to realize, wow, I can choose my response. I'm not just a victim to what's outside of me. At least in theory, there is the possibility that I can find freedom and ease in the midst of it all. So that's stage 1 in our wow process. Let's go to stage 2.
It all comes back to being overly identified in the end of the day. So you're overly identified as an individual, you're overly identified as a group, you're overly identified as a country. And so if you're overly identified with all of these different layers, how can someone else coexist with you in that realm? It's very difficult, right? We're all going around telling each other how to live and how to be and this and that. There's a more diplomatic way of doing things than going to war and this and that.
In stage 1, we found that life doesn't happen to us, it happens through us, through the thoughts and emotions that we have in response to what's happening. Now, we forget this quite easily, and the freedom that possibility brings with it, because we get overly identified with what we experience, like thoughts. You know, thoughts really are just energy arising in our awareness. My name is George. That's just a name that my parents gave me that I identified with as a thought. And some of the painful stories that I have in my life is I've got to work really hard in order to be good enough. And I don't know what some of the thoughts that are painful for you are. Maybe not feeling good enough, beautiful enough, handsome enough, whatever. In meditation particularly, we can have the experience where we realize that all these stories that used to define us are just simply energy arising in our awareness. If you've done meditation, you may have experienced the wow experience when you have a thought and you let it go and you don't latch onto it. You don't identify with it. And suddenly there's so much freedom to be found there. Those stories that used to define you don't have as much power. You see yourself more clearly. You also see the world more clearly. Like so many of the messages we get from our societies that there are the bad guys over there and the dumb guys over there, and we're the goodies. And those judgments mean that we don't see the humanity of other people, because we are all human beings at the end of the day, and that leads to conflict and violence. And so this ability to not over-identify with, just to be a bit more flexible with how we interpret the thoughts and experiences that we have. Yes, the thoughts are happening, but they may not be true, and I don't need to identify with them. Instead, I just take a breath, find some spaciousness, and in that spaciousness, I find more wisdom, and that's my freedom and power.
One of the misconceptions in the West is that Taoism is a system of self-improvement. Now, it is inadvertently, but it's not directly. It's more of a technology of down-regulating your identity and your individuality so that you can actually come into harmony with the fundamental forces of the universe. But our ego acts as sort of like a block, a dam in the river, so to speak. Humility, it's a sort of a mental space that you're in that you come into more contact with. You feel that more when, especially when you're further and further down the path. You feel humility, you feel compassion and forgiveness.
I'd like to give you the 3 stages of going from pain to peace with no words. Here we go. Ooh. Ah. Wow. So we started pointing outside of ourselves, thinking our pain comes from out here. We look within, and then we don't over-identify. We find some flexibility and spaciousness to the experiences that we have. The 3rd stage is to then really see who we are. With that spaciousness comes clarity, and we see that we're not just this individual separate self facing the world, but instead with every breath, we are connected to all the plant life that gives us the oxygen to breathe. The sun is powering the whole system of the earth. We get all these beautiful fruits to nourish us. We are part of the interconnected web of life. And so then with that understanding, for me, it seems a lot less meaningful to try and be successful in life, as opposed to really finding harmony, like understanding the world and harmonizing with it. Finding harmony in myself, becoming friends with myself, harmony in my relationships, reducing conflict, then contributing to more harmonious communities and ultimately the planet. For me, that fulfills a deep need for meaning. So we have more of those wow experiences. We understand who we really are. We find some awe and wonder for the miracle that we're a part of. You know, you and I, we are mysterious manifestations of the mysterious intelligence of the universe. And because we were born that way, we forget it. But in that spaciousness that we come from pausing and looking within and not over-identifying, meeting ourselves with kindness, wow, we open up to a broader understanding of who we are and a broader understanding of what life is about. It's not just about our personal success, but instead celebrating life and contributing to the flourishing of life. So let me know your thoughts on the wow process. If you've had any wows this week or during this video, let me know down in the comments down below. If you'd like to watch the full conversation with me and Jason, it's on my new podcast channel. Go and subscribe, and please do share with anyone that you think would enjoy. As always, I'm grateful for your presence and sending you my best wishes for waking up, having some more wow experiences.